sharply conservative. Steph.
All right, I want to bring my panel in to help break this down. Matt Schlapp, he's a Trump supporter and the chairman of the American Conservative Union, and Jamal Simmons is a Democratic strategist and principal at the Raven Group. Welcome to both. Matt, I want to start with you.
Sure.
More than 24 Republicans, true conservatives like yourself, have said, I can't back this thing.
Right.
Is it the right move to stay true to your conservative principles, or is it the right move to get behind the president and get this thing through?
That's a great question. It's not just conservatives who are opposed. There are also some moderate Republicans who are a little worried about the numbers that came out of the CBO that shows that maybe more Americans would not have health insurance if this bill passes. But for conservatives, what they have to decide is this. Look, all legislation is imperfect, but they have to ask themselves, do I stick to my guns on this, or in the end, is it too big a failure for Donald Trump if this doesn't pass? Remember, this is a very personal thing for the president. If on his very first legislative attempt, he stumbles on a replacement to Obamacare, it's a big loss. And that's why I think they're going to work hard to try to get these votes. And they have the potential to get there.
Jamal, it's a big loss for the president, not just saving face, but if you look at the markets yesterday, he's losing the confidence of those who have said, I'm backing this guy's policies. Is the president using his bully pulpit, which, let's be honest, has definitely worked for him in the past? Is that the right move right now to get up and say to other conservatives, guess what? You don't back me? Watch out for 2018. I won't back you. Is this the right move to do that?
Well, first of all, Stephanie, it's better to have a loss for the president than it is to have a loss for the country, where people lose their Medicaid coverage. Medicare trust fund is put in jeopardy because of some of the tax cuts the president wants to put into place. And instead, I just don't understand why you walk into a meeting with Republicans who some of them did not run as Trump Republicans and go out there and just say, I'm going to run against you. I mean, that's the kind of thing, those are fighting words. And if anybody has any sort of manhood or womanhood left inside of them, you'd think they'd sort of stand up to the president and say, you know what, mister, bring it on. Come to my district and let's have it out.
I want to share what Mo Brooks said just last night on MSNBC. Let's take a look.
I see it as a test vote as to who is conservative in the House of Representatives and the Republican conference, and who is a big government liberal Republican who runs as a conservative during campaign season but governs as a liberal. So we'll find out.
Okay, so at this point, it doesn't seem like there's a path for someone like Mo to get behind President Trump. But when you actually look at what is inside this bill,
right,
is President Trump in a tough spot in terms of what conservatives want and what Trump supporters want are two different things. And President Trump, a big idea guy, not a detail guy. And those details are what are going to keep Americans covered.
Well, let's get to a detail here. What the hang-up is with conservatives in the House is this budget vehicle called reconciliation, which allows this bill to pass with a simple majority in the Senate. It doesn't need the 60 votes. It just needs 51. But in order to get on the reconciliation vehicle, you can't put all the changes on it. Only some will pass the test. And what conservatives and the administration and Paul Ryan are fighting about is what will pass the test of the parliamentarian. The most important person in all this is the Senate parliamentarian. And that's one of those little details that's annoying to people.
Here's the thing, Matt. You guys have had 7 or 8 years to figure this out. Now, what's going to happen in the next 7 or 8 hours is different than what happened in the last 8 years.
I think that's a fair charge, which is Republicans have been criticizing Obamacare for a number of years. And this is our time to actually, put up or shut up. And so I think it's a fair charge.
All right. And Jamal, over the weekend, Mike Bloomberg put out an op-ed saying Democrats don't make the same mistake Republicans did. Don't simply block Neil Gorsuch for the sake of it. Put country before party. I fully understand all the hurt feelings out there, but you could do a lot worse than Neil Gorsuch. Is it the right time to use all the firepower?
And so what I would say to Mike Bloomberg and to everyone else is absolutely Democrats should put country before party. And you know what? A majority of the country rejected Donald Trump. Everybody talks about Donald Trump being elected by this country. He was elected by a minority of people in this country. They just happen to be in some pretty key places. So his job as president of the United States is to now be president of all of us. And you know what? More than 50% of people, even 50% of Trump voters are in favor of Planned Parenthood, but Neil Gorsuch voted to make sure we give a governor in Utah the ability to block funding for Planned Parenthood. I think people who are for a country where we're including everyone, where we're protecting women's right to choose, where we're giving workers the ability to fight for their own rights, those people should not be for Neil Gorsuch, and Democrats have a right to stand up for that.
Neil Gorsuch seems a lot more like a Mitch McConnell guy than necessarily Donald Trump's chosen one. Is there an argument to be made, given that there's an FBI investigation, given that there's all this noise? Is there an argument to be made, Matt, that things should just get pushed off, give it some more time here?
Absolutely not. First of all, Bill Clinton was elected twice to the presidency without getting a majority of Americans.
And
George W. Bush wasn't elected with a majority of Americans. It's the way our system is. Sometimes races are very tight, and this last race was. But one of the things I think
it was 3 million votes.
What'd you say?
It was 3 million votes.
Yeah, whatever, California.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, because Californians aren't Americans.
Let's get to the question. You said it, Ivan. Let's get to this question about whether or not Neil Gorsuch should go forward. Not only should it go forward, he's going to get confirmed. Have you seen this man handle these questions? Let's face it, we all know it. He's going to get the votes. And if the Democrats want to filibuster him, which will really be almost the first time in modern history that they go after a Supreme Court nominee, bring it on, because then what's going to happen is that the threshold for these Supreme Court nominees is going to get dropped to 50, and there's probably 1 or 2 other openings coming up within a year. So if the Democrats want to be that partisan, they'd be unwise to, but they don't always listen to me. So we'll see what
Okay,
they
hold
do.
on. Matt does bring up a good point. You've got somewhat of a... is that the right move for Democrats? And then suddenly you change the game, and the person to get nominated next could be far scarier. You've got to play the long game here.
Here's the thing about that. Mitch McConnell can do this any day he feels like it. So it doesn't matter if we have that fight today or we have that fight a year or a year and a half from now. If that's what Mitch McConnell wants to do, Mitch McConnell's going to do it. What Democratic voters want, and I think what most of the people who we saw, the millions of people who are out in these streets at the Women's March, the people who are showing up at town hall meetings, what they want from Democrats is 2 things. They want courage and they want vision. They want the courage of our convictions, and they want us to have a vision for where to take this country and to include everybody in the prosperity that the people at the top of the ladder are receiving. And that's what Democrats have to do if they want to win.
Fight everything. Fight Neil Gorsuch. The American people are watching this man answer the questions, and they're impressed.
All right, or maybe there's an argument, Matt, that we want to see Democrats stand up, respect yourself, respect your state that you represent, because a lot of people are looking at Republicans here saying, are you really going to get behind President Trump day in and day out after the tweets, after the insults? That's got to hurt Republicans when they go home to some of their states, no?
I respect the 54% of Americans who voted for someone else other than Donald Trump.
You did a very good job with your answer. Now I'm going to give you my answer. There is no question that every moment of the Trump presidency is not bliss for Republicans. But the fact is the man fights, and he fights for the principles they care about. One of the principles they care about is making sure that the Supreme Court simply looks at the law, just like on the temporary travel ban. They want the judges to look at the law. On the Planned Parenthood case, all Neil Gorsuch did is look at the law. I don't even know what Neil Gorsuch's position is on Planned Parenthood personally.
I'm going to bring in my panel. Matt, for Sean Spicer to say today, well, we're not going to comment on someone who's not employed by the White House. Well, which is it? Because yesterday, Sean Spicer did comment on Paul Manafort and Paul Manafort's role in the campaign incorrectly, saying he had a very limited role. So in terms of transparency, what is the White House doing? They're losing a lot of credibility this week.
I think, I've been watching these hearings with the Intelligence Committee and FBI Director Comey. And he made it very clear that there's an investigation going on about Russia's actions in our election and also about wrongdoing with members of the Trump campaign. When there's an investigation going on, the White House has no business commenting on any of it. What I would advise this White House to say is simply you will not comment on people that are caught up in this investigation, and don't comment it because it would be inappropriate. We all want to know what the facts are. We all want to know what the FBI is going to say happened and did not happen. And the same thing goes with the intelligence committees in Congress.
James Comey also talked about the wiretapping on Monday, refuting President Trump's claims. We heard the same thing from bipartisan leadership on the Intelligence Committee. What's your take? I know when MSNBC spoke to you last week, you were still saying, listen, give it time. Let's hear what they have to say.
Look, I think this concept of wiretapping is a 1950s dragnet term. What happens in 21st century espionage and eavesdropping is surveillance, and it happens through our phones. It happens through
Don't you microwave wordsmith me?
I'm not
President
microwaving.
Trump on a Saturday morning gets out and says, I just heard President Obama wiretap.
Let me be really clear. The government can listen in on our conversations with our phones, and we know for a fact that they did that, and they've already unmasked one person that's going to be looked at in this investigation, and I don't know who else they did. What I'm going to do is I make you a promise. After the FBI comes out with their findings and these intelligence committees in Congress comes out with them, if it turns out there is no truth to any surveillance of anybody from Obama team to Trump team, I'll tell you that I stand by what they said.
Do you think President Trump ever will? I mean, this morning, the Wall Street Journal is now putting out a piece saying President Trump is losing major credibility. They said the president His wiretap assertion like a drunk to an empty gin bottle. Jamal, when you look at the last couple of days, the president is hanging on to the wiretap claims. They continue to say Russia is a ruse. You look at the markets, for example, finally responding or starting to respond, saying maybe these promises aren't going to result in the impact that we want, the policies that we want. What does the White House need to do here?
The first thing they should do is stop lying. The first thing,
Okay, but come on.
No, but seriously. I mean, that would be helpful in terms of having the credibility to govern the country and having the rest of us have confidence that we're in the hands of people who are going to look out for our best interests and not for their own. If they're not guilty, they should stop acting like it. If they didn't do anything wrong, they should stop acting like they did. And I think you've got Mike Flynn, you've got Paul Manafort, who said they didn't meet with Russians, and we find out that they did. The president says that Barack Obama wiretapped his phones. The FBI director had to come out, and the Justice Director had to come out and say that that was not true.
This? At the center of this, get through all the other stuff that's there. I'll use a nice term. It's about whether or not there was inappropriate contact between the Trump campaign and Russia and Vladimir Putin. And I think that is going to be found to be complete garbage.
If they
But then why, hold on a second, I know we have to go to commercial, then why, over and over, does the story continue to change from the Trump campaign?
I don't think the story changes at all. No, I think.
Are you kidding?
You don't think the story changes at all? There's no ties to Russia. There's no connection.
Can one of you go after me at one time? I think that
it's her show.
I think that's right. She gets to decide. But I think that the fundamental question of all this, you can say like we learn more facts, which is right. But the fundamental charge that there was inappropriate contact between the Trump campaign and Vladimir Putin and Russia is a big charge. It's a huge charge, and I think it ought to be well-founded, and I want to hear what the FBI and what Congress says. If they say there's no facts there, and by the way, to this point they say there are no facts there, then all the rest of this, you can take it where it leads, but it doesn't matter like that central charge, and there's nothing to that central charge.
Matt, I'll play consultants to the Republicans. If I was in the Trump White House, what I would do is say, like you said, everybody stop talking. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to isolate this. We're going to find out the facts. We're going to figure it all out. And at some point, we're going to go forward and tell everybody everything that we know and clear the decks. They won't do that.
They will do that.
We have to take a commercial, but I'm going to say, Matt, they won't do that. This is a president who we've never even heard use the words, I'm sorry, or I was wrong.
But on the central question, I think they will do that.
And guess what? I'm going to be bringing Matt back.